All right, well, welcome to the Entrepreneur's Ethic podcast. So we have two repeat guests. First time we've had that. Joel Harris.
It was like a long time ago that we did this.
Well, I'm slow for repeat guests.
Yeah.
Was I like your number one? Was I your first?
No, but you were early. Colin Hurd.
All right.
And Mikayla Mooney, first time guest. So this is our Ag Startup Engine team. Thanks everybody for gathering. We actually don't get together very often. We talked about doing this over drinks or not. We may wish by the end that we had. But yeah, we're sitting here in April of 2016, and I thought it would just be interesting.
2026.
Gosh. We started this adventure.
We recorded this 10 years
in
ago.
2016.
Yeah, that's right.
We're sitting at the 10-year anniversary is
That's
what
right.
I was going to say.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
I thought we would use this as State of Agtech and State of Ag Startup Engine for a conversation. And let me start off by saying a friend called me on Wednesday. He had just gotten off the phone with a mutual friend of ours who's an investment banker type from New York who does some things in ag tech. And so our friend from here locally said, Kevin, that was depressing. Like, tell me what is going on in ag tech. And so I described it a little bit to borrow from A Tale of Two Cities as best of times and worst of times. If you think about some of the multi-billion-dollar investments into companies like Benson Hill, Farmers Business Network, Indigo Ag, not good.
Green Light Bio.
Yeah. Cook's Venture. Anyway, we could make a list.
Vertical farming.
Yes. Yeah, so there's a lot of tombstones in the space, but from an ag startup engine perspective, from a Midwest ecosystem perspective, as good as it can be in the face of an agricultural economy that isn't good. You three all went to the World Ag Tech event.
Agritech conference.
Agritech conference in San Francisco in March. I did not. So I'll leave it to you all, but what was your sense? Why don't we start kind of at the ag tech overall and then we'll drill down into ag startup engine. But what was your sense having attended that meeting of ag tech as a whole?
Well, yeah, maybe actually we should set up what that meeting is because it's kind of evolved in the last few years too. So originally it's in San Francisco, which is super weird. It used to be the World Agritech Conference, and it had the Animal Ag Tech Conference followed by Agritech and then Food Tech. So it was a week-long show, like typical conference with speed dating and with investors and panels and all that jazz. In the last few years, it's slimmed down, and now the Animal Ag Tech is in Texas, which is a little bit more appropriate, and Mikayla went to that as well. Yep. And I say it's really weird because you're in the middle of downtown San Francisco in some really, unpleasant, impoverished situations and homelessness, and then you go to these meetings and they talk about feeding the world and hunger, and it's just the juxtaposition is, I find, unpleasant.
It's hard when you're in the middle of a big city and you're supposed to be talking about agriculture when there's not really agriculture being done in the middle of the city.
Okay, so I actually think that could potentially be an interesting thread to pull on, right? Yeah. So when you look at a lot of the challenges in investing in ag tech, that conference, not to bash it because I think it's a good conference, we need to have conferences like that, but in a way it is probably the key indicator of why some of these investments aren't working, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the conference is the furthest thing from boots on the ground, real world ag, right? You're in downtown San Francisco. You're so far detached from where food is actually grown and the people that grow it, and that's a lot of the investment that's been happening too. It's very much not boots on the ground, right? It's not focused on going out to the field and seeing the real problems. It's about shiny pitch decks, conceptual problems that haven't hit the reality of the real world. And so, I don't know. Maybe there's a theme there.
Well, and that's what I think this meeting in March was like, because you felt it wasn't well attended, but I think it's just the tourist VCs weren't there. The generalists that want to get into agriculture in 2021, I mean, those years, I mean, it was packed with people.
Yeah.
I will say they definitely did a better job this year with the pre-events where they went down to the reservoir farms, saw startup tours. Farm Bureau did an event where they actually brought growers into the room to have conversations. But that was like the day before the conference, not the actual conference.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe to trace a little bit of history, ag tech as like a thing, at least outside of agriculture, wasn't a thing until, I'm going to say, 2013, when Monsanto bought Climate Corp for $1.3 billion. And not us in the Midwest per se, but the venture community at least caught on to the idea of ag tech, probably with investment increasing by the billions every year.
When you had
to
Blue
that
River
peak.
shortly after that.
Right.
Yeah, Blue River sold in 2017 perhaps for $300 million.
Yeah, it was like 2016, 17.
Yeah,
Yep.
2016, 17 for $300 million to Deere. Yeah, and into the total venture frenzy of 2021.
Yeah.
And now we've probably cut back in ag tech category investing by 50 or 60%, depending upon what you look at.
I do think, though, it's interesting. We're starting to see some of those generalist funds come back to agriculture after the Halter announcement. And like looking at some of the deals that we're seeing, like you've got funds that are robotic funds, AI funds that are leading rounds for ag tech. And so there's almost this like cyclical, they came, they left, now they're back. So we'll see how it all plays out.
It's definitely not dead, right? Like it's not like
No.
they shot their shot and they're going to give up. I just think that everybody's learned a lot, right? And that sometimes, especially when you're getting into a new category like agriculture and you don't have the practical background in it, like you got to go to the school of hard knocks. And I think a lot of people have done that. I mean, the space as a whole, though, I mean, you put Ohalo, right? That's Freeberg's thing. I mean, that's an ag tech company, right? It's cutting edge stuff. And I'm sure the amount of capital that has gone into that has probably exceeded, I don't know, I don't know what the numbers are, but it's not insignificant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those are generalist funds that are backing that. It's not ag tech specific funds.
Yeah, I hesitate to poke too much fun at Silicon Valley methods or whatever, because Silicon Valley and the way that they've funded technology is historic and great. But the software model doesn't translate into hardware. I think it's safe to say the timelines of developing agricultural technology, where we deal with seasons and real things and multidimensional problems, and the patience that capital needs.
When I do think you're seeing a lot of venture capital come into markets that historically they've never invested in. I mean, part of that's because of SpaceX. SpaceX is solving physical problems, right? And then you look at some of these other companies like Travis Kalanick just announced this new company, the Atoms Company. It's all about physical AI. And you look at like Bezos's physical AI company, and then there's another one that's pretty large too. I'm not thinking of it right now, but I did a quick calculation just last week. In the last 6 months, $9 billion has gone in. It's probably more than that, but at least $9 billion verifiable dollars has gone into like physical AI, and a lot of that touches ag. I don't think we know yet how much of it touches ag, but it's not an insignificant amount. Like ag is one of those industries that historically it's not a venture capital backed industry. Mm-hmm. But defense is the same thing, right? So that's, you look at what Anduril's done, and that's an industry that Silicon Valley wouldn't touch for years, and they went in, they disrupted it, and now there's this huge focus of VC capital going into defense.
Yeah, there's an article today in the Wall Street Journal, and I'm probably going to forget the exact name, but there's a new suburb being developed outside of Austin, Texas, called like Proto Village or Proto something. And so essentially it's this place, and they have literally inflatable buildings that have went up, and it's all this hard tech and deep tech stuff
Yep.
Yeah.
down the street from where Tesla's headquarters is at. And so they've got people building everything. I mean, there's like a guy trying to figure out how to do Adobe homes for attacking all kinds of problems in the
Right.
housing market. And yeah, so VC learning how to work on these deeper, harder problems that are sort of standard in agriculture.
Well, I think it's also too, people's definition of ag has just broadened over the last years. Like, I think we're seeing a lot on supply chain, infrastructure, water technology, or even like things that have dual use in agriculture, energy, defense. And so I think part of it is just the realization that ag isn't just corn and soybean farms or like lettuce farms in California, but it's a much broader industry and the backbone of a lot of these other verticals.
And how, yeah, to your points, some of this stuff can touch agriculture in ways that we don't imagine. I'm listening to somebody else today on a podcast, and they're talking about, well, there hasn't been the GPT moment in space yet, but that's probably going to come. And my reaction to that was, it's actually happened for me when in 2020 I became a beta user of Starlink. And so I had no access to high-speed internet, living 1 mile outside of a reasonably big town. And Elon Musk got that to me. And how big has Starlink been, Colin,
Huge.
in the precision agriculture space?
No, it's massive. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, what it's done, 3 years ago, every other political person in Iowa was reaching out and saying, what is your view on rural broadband? Why is that relevant for autonomy? And I was like, well, in some cases it's pretty relevant, but nobody's having that conversation now because that's a problem solved. You don't need rural broadband if you have Starlink.
Yeah.
Well, and it's all mobile, so you can just put it on whatever piece of equipment you need it on.
Well, and it's 10x cheaper than what rural broadband would have been to do, right? I mean, it's like you buy a $200 modem and pay a monthly fee, and problem solved.
Yeah, we're still, anyway, working through grants at Iowa State University on rural broadband, and problem solved.
Yeah, let's adjust where that money goes. I don't think there's any farmer out there that's complaining about rural broadband right now.
No, the world changed.
Yep.
Well, in 2016, I'm sitting at Governor Branstad's last inaugural, and some of our friends, Eric Peterson from Summit, Adam Kuppis from Iowa Farm Bureau, and some others that have been supporters of the agricultural entrepreneurship program that I directed at Iowa State University, looked at me probably over a few too many cocktails and said, would it be interesting for us to have a fund to invest in these people that are emerging from the program, like Colin Hurd, that are starting agricultural technology companies? Could we talk the student who graduates and is trying to figure out whether to take a job or start a company? Could we tip over that alum who's been out of school for 10 years and they have an idea, but they have a job, and do I quit my job? Could we attract entrepreneurs to our ecosystem that we might not get to central Iowa? And 10 years later, the answer's been yes. Joel, thank you for being one of the first people to say yes, because I don't think we would have gotten that first fund raised without you. Colin, your company, Smart Ag, was our first investment. You were an investment before we had our fund pulled together, which was kind of interesting. Thank you.
See, so I was your first back then. Yes. Yep. I think was it the first exit too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was like the
Yeah.
double whammy.
Within 3 years, which is
very impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't see that timeline happening.
It'd be
Well,
nice if we could get some of these other companies that move that fast. But yeah.
The other thing that you didn't mention, Kevin, that I was interested in and why part of the reason I joined is to improve the investors in Iowa, just in general. Because I had, before accelerators and incubators and everything, there was just, high net worth individuals and.
I think it was Papa John's
Papa
and
John.
maybe Next Level was around at that, not too
really.
much before. So there really wasn't. I mean, Farm Bureau had their fund, but
Yep.
Most of that's
But
all
and then
very
there was
late,
AIM seed, so there was like angel funds.
but like most of it was late stage capital.
Yeah, and when we exited, and I went through that process and was living in Chicago, it dawned on me that we needed a lot more sophistication to come back to the state on how deals are structured and how founders are incentivized, and how you do growth investing and not just ways to inflict pain if you miss your milestones. So that was part of the reason I wanted to do it.
I do think it's like anything else. You have to learn it one
Mhm.
deal at a time, one mistake at a time, and everything else. And yeah, when I think about the Midwest and how I count it, so all geographically the Dakotas down through Kansas, through Ohio, and the Lake States, that's 25% of the U.S. population, way more than 25% of agricultural production, way more than 25% of manufacturing capacity, more than 25% of headquarters of Fortune 1000 firms in the U.S., and we are 4 to 5% of venture investing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How do you change that? Well, one little fund at a time.
Well, and I think it's a testament to like the values you guys set out to have with the fund, that I would classify all of the investors that are part of Ag Startup Engine. They're all quote unquote, like I would say it's the smart money in agriculture, because while they might not be coming from an investment background, and I know like from fundraising conversations we've had, a lot of it is this education, like how do you kind of expose them to venture investing, early stage startups. But the value they bring on the understanding the industry is instrumental for all of the founders that we're investing in. So there's something to be said there about bringing people who maybe don't come from kind of an investing background to the table when you're trying to solve problems for the people at the table.
Yeah, when Bruce Rastetter hosts students from Iowa State University, one of the points he always makes is the people you meet that will change your life. And I think in the life of a startup company, just things change so fast. It's about meeting people, but it's about meeting the right person at the right time in whatever your journey is. And I know we've set up and helped facilitate some of those conversations.
We have.
Well, from where we see things, I think about categories of things that are still working. Speaking of Adam Cuppus, he called me the other day. He was in Austin, Texas. He'd had his first robo-taxi ride, he and his wife. And it was just one of those experiences. And he's like, this is cool. And he said his wife is sort of like, well, how does this affect you other than a really cool way to do things? And he said, well, there's this company called Mach in Ames, Colin, your company, and you see the future in robo-taxis, but he sees the future in Mach. So, Colin, could you comment a little bit on kind of what you're experiencing in autonomy, off-road autonomy, and what that future looks like?
Yeah, well, I think, like I said earlier, there's a tremendous amount of capital going into this space, right? And on one hand, you can look at that and say, oh my gosh, like how are we ever going to have the war chest of a Jeff Bezos, or a Travis Kalanick? He just acquired a company that was competitive with us, right? Pronto AI, which, we have. There's some VCs that are in some of our portfolio companies that have invested in that. But I think when I look at the state of off-road autonomy, it's similar to the theme of what we were talking about earlier, where there's real physical problems and real encounters that you have in the off-road environment that you're never going to see on a road, right? And so when I think about the things that we spend our time solving for at Mach, they're the really hard pieces of getting to a point where you can reliably operate machinery in dirty, dusty, poor visibility, high vegetation type environments that we farm in fundamentally, right? And one of the things that I think has been very clear to us is that the physics problem can't be solved with software purely. And so we've made a really big point to continue to invest in the sensing side of it. So we're creating some like very novel radar-based technology to actually see into vegetation, see through the dust, and work in those environments. Because so far the industry has tried to take things from automotive and apply them into ag, which sometimes can work, but in the sensing side it hasn't worked. And the biggest challenge that everybody's autonomy program has right now when we talk to our OEM customers is the sensing side, right? Like it's what happens when you can't see because there's too much dust, right? A farmer's not going to stop the planter when there's too much dust, right? But an autonomy system has to kind of. And so you have to have a way to handle those types of challenges. So I think it's a really, really interesting time to be in autonomy as a whole, but especially in the off-road autonomy, because all the progress that has been made in AI and the stuff that you're seeing with the frontier models and Anthropic and OpenAI, that's not directly applicable to the problems that we have, but the compute resources that go behind it, the inference capabilities that are on top of it, all of that does apply. And you can build software 20 times faster than you used to be able to, right? And you can test stuff way quicker. So we're seeing a ton of really exciting opportunities.
Well, Elon Musk makes the point that if the frontier models get smart just using information, wait until we take the data from Tesla of cars being out on the road, and then wait until we take the Optimus robots and take data from that. But I hadn't really connected that to wait until we take data from agricultural applications of harvesting plants.
That's why the Waymos shut down when it rains, right? I mean, because effectively you would solve for that too, because you're not going to stop moving stuff in the field if it's raining necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, so like just think about one of our target use cases in cattle feeding, right? You can't stop feeding cattle because it's snowing or raining, right? There's just
cows don't care.
Yeah, the cows are still going to be hungry, and you've got thousands of head of cows to feed, and you have to do it every single day of the year, and so you have to have that reliability.
Twice a day.
Yeah, twice a day. Yeah. So there's some really hard problems that still exist out there, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes us valuable as a company, is like we can start understanding those problem sets really clearly, collecting that data set that helps us train those models, and then be able to deploy them on the edge. Because, back to the kind of the Starlink question, Starlink solves for like connecting your machine to the internet anywhere in the world. What it doesn't do is give you the right kind of latency where, you think about using ChatGPT on a day-to-day basis. It's going up to a server and it's coming back down. It does it pretty quick, but you can't steer a vehicle based off that latency, right? So you've got to be able to do all of that AI decision-making on the edge. Mm-hmm. So it means you have to physically have a computer that can do those calculations, run those models, make those decisions in almost real time to be able to navigate that machine safely through an environment. So it's exciting. I think one of the things that is happening more and more, and we're starting to apply this, is we're moving from deterministic systems, meaning you give it a path and it follows that path very precisely and it does like a repeatable pattern, to non-deterministic, meaning we give it an objective and it figures out how to do it. And so that's probably going to be the aha moment within this industry, is when we can run a machine completely non-deterministically, objective-based instead of rules-based. And that will allow us to scale really quickly into a lot of environments very fast. So that's what we're super excited about right now.
Well, and I imagine too, like there's something to be said about the fact that you guys have use cases in multiple different industries for multiple different problems, that you're going to be able to move at a pace that's so much faster because you're being exposed to all of these different use cases, that your models are going to get to this non-deterministic point,
Yeah.
theoretically faster.
Yes, we can learn a lot from a lot of different places and then cross apply it,
Yeah.
right? So we are constantly arbitraging our own technology within the customer base that we have. So requirements for defense, we can take those and apply those to ag and vice versa, and it allows you to be a lot more generic on the decision-making side, but then applicable in a lot more spaces at the same time.
Well, speaking of cross-discipline, it's a recent but neat story, Mikayla. So TerraBlaster,
Yeah.
using a technology developed by NASA for soil sampling on Mars, now being brought to agriculture and a recent addition to our portfolio. Could you share that story with our audience?
Yeah. So, I mean, Colin, you've known Jorge for a while.
Yeah, speaking of Blue River Technologies,
Yep.
Right.
one of the co-founders of Blue River,
Yeah,
Jorge.
yeah, yep.
Yeah, so I think we were really excited about the fact that like it is this interesting technology, and if you can get to where you only have to do a single pass over the field, where you could detect what's going on in the soil, have real-time data, and get to real-time application for the nutrient input, you're saving farmers a ton of time, labor, and cost.
Yeah, so for our audience, soil sampling is not nothing new, but
No.
you analyze for nitrogen, phosphorus, other nutrients using wet chemistry. So you're physically taking soil to a lab, getting test results back. TerraBlaster is using a laser technology to do it in real time.
Yes.
So better, faster, cheaper, to say the least.
Yes.
Still early
Well,
stage.
yeah, and then the ultimate impact there is like, so we variable rate herbicide today, and that's fundamentally what Jorge's first company was about, right? Is see and spray technology. So you didn't have to just put a blanket rate down. You could actually precisely target the plants or the weeds, and this is the same concept. It's just applied to nutrients, right? So basically, you can always apply the right rate based off of what the current nutrients tell you and the soil types and everything that are in a field. And so the cost savings is drastic because you, and especially with today's fertilizer prices, I mean, it's a good tailwind for his business.
Well, and I think the interesting thing, I think it's such a great example of like the power of Ag Startup Engine and what we try to do. Like it's not just the capital, but how do we connect the dots to, resources here at Iowa State? How do we connect the dots to farmers and fields to trial it in, or our manufacturing investors who can be value add and kind of surround the startup with all the things they would need to actually get to commercialization faster?
Yeah, Jorge has been a very successful person. He's still very connected. When you sell something for $300 million to Deere and you go out to raise money for your next company, I don't know for sure, but my perception is he hasn't had a big problem raising money for TerraBlaster. Yet, last July, he came to Ames explicitly to meet. Mikayla, you put together a meeting, probably 50 people,
I think so. Yeah.
between people from the United States and Brazil to listen to the pitch, but he specifically had investors in Ag Startup Engine that he wanted to get involved in the company. And we have soil in Iowa. I mean, that's
We have a lot of
kind of
soil.
practical, but it was just a cool thing that for the last part of his raise, he wanted to have relatively small investment from Ag Startup Engine be on his cap table.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it goes back to the boots on the ground, right? And that's where you can give Jorge a ton of credit, is he's not trying to sit in a Silicon Valley palace and come up with an ag tech company, right? He wants to be connected to the farmers. And what better place than Iowa, right? I mean, and what better group than Ag Startup Engine to help make that happen? And so I think, I think he'll be very successful because he's out there in the dirt, and
Quite
it's
literally.
important. Yeah. Yep.
Well, zooming to a different conversation, last week, another one of the founders of one of our portfolio companies stopped by Wes Wierson with Leah Labs. And so they have had a CAR-T technology for the most common form of canine cancer. He described to me how AI, not just his AI, but some partners, are allowing him to custom design proteins, speed up what he is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Another portfolio company, Joel Genvax, in the same space, trying to solve somewhat significant problems like avian influenza, African swine fever. Can you take us a little bit into your world and how, whether it's AI or anything else, things have accelerated?
Yeah, it's hearing you guys talk, it is interesting that a lot of the tech that is now being commercialized, how it started off as these government projects, right? Like you got GPS and the NASA laser technology. Our platform, self-amplifying messenger RNA, came out of USAMRIID, which is the U.S. Army Medical Research and Defense in the 80s. And so there's a lot of all these things that kind of generate from government inventions and stuff, with the exception of AI. Like AI is the only like groundbreaking thing that's kind of come out of the private sector. So it's kind of a weird convergence, I think, that's happening where we can, actually see some benefits that a lot faster than maybe they've come to market previously over decades. So at Genvax, yeah, I mean, we are developing customized vaccines for livestock producers facing not just the scary foreign animal diseases, but some of the endemic diseases like swine influenza or rotavirus, porcine circovirus. Wes is more on the therapeutic side, so treating different forms of cancer. He's really embraced AI for things that a lot of our startups are doing, which is doing a startup more efficient, not having to hire a bunch of people, maybe failing faster, doing iterations. So I think that's been really useful. We've embraced it in a way to, I think also to be more efficient or lean and not have to, hire as many people. The one thing I do hesitate, I think it is really cool, and there's been like Google and some of these others have had projects to use AI to form novel proteins or novel chemical compounds. There's only been like one of those that have gotten like through human trials or through clinical trials. So I think I'm a little more, not skeptic, but I think there's a lot of hype around it. And I'd be really, I think you still need a lot of human intervention to suss out some of the noise there. That being said, I mean, I think the whole thing that Wes does to fail faster and plan his experiments is really, really useful. And we've done that in a little bit, but I think as investors too, I mean, you kind of can smell the BS when you get a deck and it's like .ai at the end of it. It's just like, well, some people fall for that, but I hope we haven't really.
I don't think so. Like, I mean, I think we have conversations and people are always asking, like, what AI startups have you invested in? And I think where I see it more often is we see our founders using AI internally to speed up their processes, help develop new programs, products, whatnot. But it's not like a fundamental like AI model or things like that. And so I think that's been working really well. And I truly think in agriculture, farmers and producers aren't wanting to buy AI. They want the tool that solves their problem. And if it's built or like running on AI, then that's fine. But they're not buying it because it's AI.
Yeah, AI feels to me like the truest expression of the old Steve Jobs clip from like the late 70s, early 80s of the bicycle of the computers is the bicycle of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, finally we have something where maybe it's the motorcycle of the mind, or at least moving toward that. But yeah, it's a much better tool in the toolbox.
Well, I remember it was probably like 5 years ago, but somebody's like, well, what impact is AI going to have? And I was like, in some point in the future, we're going to talk about AI just as commonly as we talk about the internet, right? Yes. I mean, because it's an infrastructure. It is not like, it's not like, oh, I'm an AI company. It's like you're not an internet company unless you're like a telecom or something, right? And it will be similar with AI, right? Every company is probably already and will continue to use AI, just like every company uses the internet, right? So it's just like, it's a backbone of productivity.
Or email or whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, robotics and AI, thinking of another portfolio company, Finite, and the other end of livestock, dealing with livestock manure. But Mikayla, I think that's been a great story too.
Yeah, I think that one's really interesting because you're taking what would normally be considered like a waste product, although a lot of farmers use manure as fertilizer. But it's not always the easiest thing to put on the fields. And so they've invented this drying technology that allows you to produce it as a low-cost fertilizer, pelletize it, and make it more applicable and easier to use. And so it's kind of this circular economy model of taking kind of one waste stream, turning it into this valuable product, especially at a time when fertilizer prices are astronomically high.
But that's a weird one too, because it's like the original value proposition was sustainability and regenerative agriculture, and we're going to save the planet.
Yeah.
And now it's like we're solving for supply chain disruptions and economic pressures. And
well, and it's interesting too because I think you could make the strong argument that they are a logistics company. Like they're literally taking manure from a farm, taking it to a site, processing it, then like off to a distributor and selling it. So it's like all of these moving pieces, and they are an agriculture company, but at the core of it, it's really a logistics play and figuring out how do you move all these pieces efficiently.
Well, and how do you fund the sites and buy the land and have different financial instruments so that it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the problem that they're solving, right? You think about traditional slurry, it's 90% water, and to transport it is highly expensive and inefficient. The other problem with slurries is you don't know the exact nutritional value on it, right?
It changes.
Yeah, you can have total shifts in the NPK, and so
you can standardize it.
If you can standardize it or measure it and then have a set product, I mean, it makes manure that much more valuable. So it's a cool business model.
Well, and applying lessons that he learned in the mining industry of fractionating different inputs into consistent outputs.
Well, and I think it's a great example of like when I look at our portfolio, they're all in ag. But again, you can make this argument that some of them are doing things that are not quote unquote your traditional like ag model. So, you know, we've got Grosswind and FlowVision, things that are more like supply chain, municipality, water. So like it's ag, but it's a very broad umbrella of ag.
Well, and going back to 2000,
it's green, yeah. If it's green,
it's green or touches the food supply chain, and farmers have dogs, which is the case I made for investing in the dog cancer.
Exactly, exactly.
So,
well, at our first pitch meeting that we held, Colin, again, we'd already given you the money, but we had you pitch. But then Martin Gross from Grosswind pitched, and I still remember Jude Conway was with Ag Venture.
Yeah,
and it was fine for him to ask the question, but Martin and Colin left the room. And well, I like Grosswind, he said, but is it really ag tech? And I said, Jude, what color is algae? He said, green. I said, it's agriculture.
Yeah.
But the cool, really profound thing is that it's an agricultural technology solving, in most of their applications, at least right now, a non-agricultural problem, and that's, runoff into streams from municipal wastewater.
But it's an industry that's never going to go away. Like, we always have to treat wastewater.
Yeah. And also an example of the patience that capital has to have. They're doing great. Sales are big. They have installations as far away as Singapore. Mm-hmm. Biggest one, I think, is in the Tri-Cities in Washington State. Doing a project for a new beef plant in western Iowa. Anyway, it's just, but it's mechanical.
It's regulatory.
It's regulatory, so it has to go through approvals and government, which
it's city budgets.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So it just takes a while.
I mean, I think that is probably more standard than Colin's 3-year exit. So I think that's a good benchmark of like realistically, like I think Martin started 2015, 2016, so almost 10 years in, but there was years of research from his PhD program that led to the start of the company, and it was probably 5-6 years before they started getting real commercial traction because they were navigating all of the bureaucracy legislation. And I think that's actually pretty standard for a lot of ag tech companies or founders solving challenges in this industry, just because it is slow and cyclical by nature.
Well, we can, as entrepreneurs, make fun of regulatory processes, whether it's getting a waste treatment system approved or, my goodness, Joel, yeah, for vaccines, even animal vaccines.
Or mRNA vaccines.
Yeah.
It's not controversial.
Not at all.
RFK. Yeah, interesting times. But it doesn't go away, right? If you want to have these products in the space, you have to deal with it.
There's something to be said about having a regulatory and like policy strategy as a founder. And I think it's one of the areas founders easily overlook, thinking, oh, here's the guidelines, I can navigate this. I don't need someone who's maybe been there, done that, or knows who to talk to or point directions to. Yeah.
And being a small state from a population perspective with very hands-on congressional delegations and governors, I think Joel has been helpful, both at Harris Vaccines and at GenVax.
Mm-hmm.
People that will get involved to advocate for even early stage companies here makes a difference.
Yeah, you've done a great job of that, Joel.
Yeah, I need to
it's a
talk to your guy.
It was a
Yeah.
necessity, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I've told this story, but at one point at Harris Vaccines, we were making so much progress, we were starting to eat away at some of the big pharma market share, and we were kind of in this regulatory gray zone because there weren't any rules around it, and we were, getting validated, and so they tried to literally shut us down, and we had to advocate. We used Senator Grassley wrote a very nice letter to then Secretary of Ag Vilsack and said, you can't just shut down this company. You need to regulate it. Like, do your job. And that went a long way. But that was my first. And my father and I were very naive to the fact that we would have to go to Washington like once a month and do the work and do the coffee thing and the networking. But since then, if you're gonna have public relations, customer relations, investor relations, you need a government relations pillar in your strategy for as you have a company. And some people would think that, well, like I'm in software or, some things that don't have obvious regulations, but you think about at the end of the teens where there was data privacy laws, they're getting in legislature, or different state taxes for e-commerce that started coming about. I mean, there's always going to be like something.
Yeah.
And you've got a big push now to not regulate anything in AI for the sake of not hindering innovation. But, New York got something passed. I think it's pretty light. So it's coming, whether it's here or in Europe or other places, like there will be some sort of regulation.
Well, even like California on the autonomous tractor regulation, we'll see. Founders have figured out ways to navigate through that, but yeah, state by state legislation impacts innovation.
Yeah. So I'm not against it. I mean, we want to be regulated. There's a lot of perks to it, right? So it's really having a strategy of how you're going to manage it, how you're going to advocate for what you want and the reasons you want it, and have real strategies. And because at the end of the day, if you're solving a problem for your consumer, they should reap all the benefits of that and shouldn't be prohibited from access to that tech.
Well, and food safety, vaccine safety, off-roadway safety. Those things are going to touch on regulatory rails. Yeah, like your experience at Harris Vaccines, if you're in a gray area because you're on something new, yeah, maybe you can operate without regulations, but then your risk is if you start putting a dent in the incumbents, they will use the lack of structure to take you out.
Yeah, right.
And that could be way worse.
Well, now we've paved a road where other companies and other tech now have a path, whereas we had no path and had to blaze it ourselves. And so it's good. It has repercussions for platforms or other technologies that we aren't even thinking about right now. Try to force the government to, update the rules and so that we can have this stuff.
Yeah. Well, Mikayla, you mentioned flow vision. So using AI in meat processing plants and just been tremendously resourceful at getting a solution. And of course, maybe it will get there eventually, but it's another example of where there might be this vision of robotic labor in packing plants, a classic dirty job, right? And a big cost and a big problem and very dirty job. Well, he hasn't gotten to robotics yet, but he puts AI in meat cutting stands to make the job easier, to make it more efficient, to cut down on waste. And that sort of solution as the beginning pathway, I think, is just cool to see roll out.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's taken a very diligent approach to how he's gone to market. I think if he came out and be like, we have this robotic solution, it's fully autonomous, everyone would be like, yeah, we're not quite ready for that yet. So how do you incrementally get your customer there? And I think it's the same way with agriculture. I mean, it's taken a very long time. You think about autonomous tractors and whatnot. It's not like it instantly happened overnight. You were working on this back in 2015. Yeah. And it's like we're slowly starting to see adoption levels get to where it becomes more mainstream. And I think that's the case for most industries. And so for founders who can kind of get their foot in the door, create that wedge, and then incrementally stack value on top of it and get to where their end vision is, I think that sets them up to be the most successful.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, there's some of our Portco's pitches, there's things they say that really stick with me over time. And like the one thing FlowVision said, and this was kind of before AI, but around computer vision, that wasn't at the forefront of his pitch. It was like, we have this initial product and we're going to be recording everything that our initial customers use. And then we will use that to feed computer vision. And eventually that's where, you know what I mean? Like he laid the roadmap of how we can have a real MVP, like a minimum viable product, but this is really what we're going to do. And I see so many people jumping to the end all the time.
Yeah,
not like how they're going to get there.
Yeah. And well, you see that in the autonomy space all the time, right? You hear from these very well-meaning and often extremely talented founders that said, I'm going to build a novel new tractor design and it's going to be all electric and it's going to be autonomous. And it's like, well, hold off. Like pick one of those things, because if you try to do all three at the same time, one, it's going to be really hard to get your customer to adopt it because it's so non-traditional from where they're at today. And two, you need $1 billion to even get close to like doing that right and having the production capacity to make that a reality. And so finding those incremental ways to like get really good at one piece of the problem set and then move on makes so much sense, right? It's classic scope creep that we all fall prey to as founders sometimes. But
well, that's because the big vision is easy to pitch and you're like, this is so exciting, this is great.
Right.
Well, scope creep. Alternative proteins. Talk about a category that came and went. 2019-ish, there was a chart being circulated by a Harvard faculty member, I'll leave it at that, showing 2040 perhaps 60% of proteins consumed in the United States being non-animal, tissue, lab-grown plant proteins, all that kind of stuff. In my executive MBA class, there was a PhD who'd grown tissue cultures in a lab. Anyway, he went through just some of the math over the amount of wastewater, and it would be like 6 Lake Superiors a day, aside from just the cost of the whole thing. But he just pointed out the infeasibility of the whole thing. So our portfolio, light on the Beyond Meat.
Yeah, we don't have any of it. And I think now it's interesting we're at a complete opposite end of the spectrum. Everyone wants to eat a carnivore diet, and the food pyramid has been flipped on its head.
We've got a steak at the top. We've got eggs. We've got cheese.
Turns out animals are really good at taking plants and turning them into protein.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, they're like those pitches about like how we've made a bioreactor to grow meat that is so efficient at taking all the waste and toxins that come from that, and it's like So you reinvented the cow,
Right.
basically.
Put it in
that
a
evolved-
chamber.
Yeah.
Yes.
The rumen
Like
is
the
this
cow
amazing
is-
piece of technology.
Yeah, that has everything that,
But I think that's a testament to our investors as well, and back to the boots on the ground. When you've got, I don't know, would you say like 40-ish% of our LPs are in swine, poultry, cattle production.
Yeah.
It's really hard to want to do something that's going to displace that. That economy.
There were opportunities like for technologies that support that type of stuff, which
Yeah.
I think are interesting.
Agreed.
And honestly, I do think some of the stuff in aquaculture
Mhm.
is really interesting.
Yes.
Well, I was going to say we do have one alt protein as part of our portfolio, a company called Midland Seafood.
Yeah, but seafood's not really alternative protein, Kevin. It's not
In the
grown
Midwest, it is.
Hey, maybe. Okay, maybe. We are in swine country.
Yeah, and on that
They're raised
pyramid,
the
there's a
same way.
disproportionately
Yeah, actually, they.
there's a disproportionately big shrimp on that food pyramid. So I gave Jackson and Sarah Kimley with Midland a hard time at their good job of lobbying RFK for
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Anyway,
The
who knows
big-
where that
the
came
big
from?
shrimp, yeah.
Yeah, the big shrimp. But they will have by the end of this year 8 contract farms taking inspiration from contract pork production, contract
and
poultry
taking
production.
old pork or old
And
hog
oftentimes-
facilities and turning them into aquaculture facilities.
For capital efficient indoor production. And yeah, you want to take another sector going back to the 1970s that is full of failed startups. Indoor aquaculture is it.
Yeah.
And Midland has a long way to go, but they have real farmers producing shrimp today.
But I think there's some parallels, I think, of Midland and then Clayton Farms doing the indoor vertical farming. We've seen the same of like tons of money went into both those industries and then they went belly up. Both of those founders have taken a much more grounded approach in unit economics and going small scale, not creating this massive multi-million-dollar facility. And they're also not selling commodity products. They're both selling premium products. And so figuring out that like unit economics and what do your customers actually want, I think has been key to them sticking around and not ending up belly upside down. Yeah.
Yeah, for people that have participated in this industry, you understand a couple things. Number one, most industries are mature, and so they're very competitive. And we can make fun of big companies in those spaces, but they're really good at what they do, and they're at the bottom end of those average total cost curves. Secondly, everybody eats. That's the good news. But most people, perhaps me accepted, do try to economize on their food purchases. Okay.
We have no food budget.
Okay. Anyway, you have to compete. And
Yeah.
so having entrepreneurs like Clayton Mooney and Jackson Kimley and Matt Ellis makes a difference.
Well, they're also getting some good tailwinds. I
Yes.
mean, when 90% of the shrimp is imported,
Yeah.
Right.
and then I think it's also things hit at different points, right? So even at Clayton Farms, there's a big push on the proximity to your food and how quickly you can get it, and the retaining of the nutrients. And then there's this like longevity component of it too. There are kind of like these global and cultural things that if you could be 10 years too early or too late, and if you hit, there is a luck component. If you hit it right, you'll benefit. The same thing with the fertilizer
Right.
thing too. It's
But
like,
and part of
Goldilocks
it,
effect helps.
Goldilocks
There
effect,
is.
yeah.
Not too early,
Right.
not too late.
But I think the other piece is like the founders have to have the will to survive getting to that Goldilocks moment. And I think of some of like the Midwest founders, and maybe it's because they come from a agriculture background. Farm kids have good work ethics and they're just don't quit. Because I think a lot of our portfolio companies have maybe not always had the easiest time fundraising, but they've figured out how to make it work and are now starting to see that success pay off.
Yeah. Well, maybe turning for the last part of our conversation to the future. I hang around some with that Jackson guy and talk about shrimp. And who knows where it goes, but he talks about having a vision of hopefully other companies doing the same thing or similar things, but his company getting to a big network of contract farms and producing 1 billion pounds of shrimp, which is pretty cool. We have some investors who look at what we do and look forward to the $1 billion Ag Startup Engine Fund, which we also are a long ways away from. Yet, here we sit 10 years after having started what we're up to. Entrepreneurs have done great work, and that is primarily where it's at. Our investors have leaned in at the right time to help out, and that network continues to grow. But how do you think about our next 10 years at Ag Startup Engine and beyond?
I mean, from my perspective, I think what we've done so well is create this network of people in agriculture, both from our founders, our investors, and those that are part of our sponsor network. People just want to see the industry move forward. So I think whatever shape or form it looks like, whether it's, satellite funds in other regions or a much larger fund down the road, I think the key is how do we continue to grow that network and maybe fill in and bring people to the table in areas where we're maybe light on expertise. And so how do we bring, more farmers, producers, family-owned ag companies around the table that all are striving towards the same thing so we can continue to grow the effect all across the U.S. and internationally and just create this really solid community of people. And I think that's probably what's been differentiated for where we sit in kind of this venture ecosystem. We've always been a little bit of an odd duck because we're a little maybe more network capital mentorship focused, not truly venture financial transaction between LPs and like a fund.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, the model's not an accelerator, but when you look at like a Y Combinator, right, there's that network effect there. It's like a badge of honor, and I think that's part of what I think we've learned in Ag Startup Engine thus far is like there is this network effect, and there's this badge of honor of being part of it because it's real companies solving real problems, and there's a really cool group of people who are supportive of that throughout industry that you're not normally going to get access to on the West Coast, right? And so I think as I look at the future of what Ag Startup Engine can be, it's more of that for sure. It's more capital and more underfunded markets too, right? Because we're just one dot on the map in the Midwest in Iowa, and there's a lot of areas where there's other great ag tech innovation happening, and being able to support that better and expand that network to those areas makes a lot of sense.
Well, we went from, 1 million in assets to a little over 10 million in assets under management in 10 years. So I don't see why we can't be 100 million in 10 years.
In 10 years.
I mean,
Got to compound it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to be more, I mean, I think what I want, like the self-fulfilling or sending the elevator back down. I mean, we've got Colin now part of the fund. We've got other founders that want to be part of the fund in the future, that they want to give back like that. And that's what I want to do. So, originally it was kind of just me, right? And you. And so now that's kind of tripled or quadrupled. So I think, we should have goals like that we keep that momentum,
I think that was one of the coolest things of, raising this third fund, the number of founders from our early portfolios some have had exits, some of them haven't, but have wanted to invest and be part of the fund and like what we're trying to build.
And if you think about the flywheel that is Silicon Valley, that has to be a big part of it, doesn't it?
100%.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so we need to do the same thing. And part of the exciting thing, Mikayla, watching you raise this third fund has been watching the reaction of some of our friends from Brazil, another major agricultural production area, but coming here and sort of watching them through a fresh set of eyes, be like, do you realize how good this is, what you have going on, and how can we be a part of it?
Well, full circle back to the San Francisco meeting. I mean, I was shocked how many people were like congratulating us on just
Yeah.
closing a fund. Like we
Yes.
didn't hit our goal. You know, we wanted to
Yeah.
do 10 and we ended at 7, but like there's people that are not raising another fund or returning money to LPs before deploying. Like, so
Well, yeah,
Yes.
just to go for full circle even further, like in terms of like you were talking, Mikayla, about the grit it takes to get through. Sometimes maybe it's a timing issue.
Sure.
Sometimes it's not being able to raise capital when you need to. And so many of our portfolio companies have that resilience, right? They're willing to grind through, solve the hard problems despite not having all the resources they need sometimes. In a way, that's Ag Startup Engine too, right?
Yeah.
It's never been easy for us to raise capital. There's not a lot of people that invest in venture that live in Iowa and that know of the problem sets we're trying to help solve. And when you look at the macro economy, right? We started the conversation with how rough the macro ag tech space is right now. To be able to raise capital in this environment and to persist and continue to have that compounding effect that we're seeing within the portfolio is gonna pay dividends, right? And it's not even just an ag tech thing. I mean, the entire venture market has been stifled over the last 5+ years just because there hasn't been the liquidity coming back into it. And that it's super easy to raise a fund if you just returned your last one.
yeah,
Nobody's been able to return their funds.
Yeah.
And
any type of like vertical.
yeah, right.
So
it's
it
not
doesn't
just
matter.
ag. Yeah. So there's just not a lot of capital coming back into venture. And I think from what I can tell, we're about on the other side of that. We're going to start seeing a lot of that liquidity. There's a lot of companies that need to generate liquidity, and they will start doing that. So I think the future is super bright.
Yeah.
And for the people that persisted and gritted through the hard times, there's always good times on the other side of that. So.
Well, Mikayla, Colin, Joel, thank you for everything you do, and cheers to the next 10 years.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin.
Cheers.